Hello, the title of this section is Configuring a VM for Stackdriver Monitoring and Logging, Part 2. So if you recall in the last video, there were some of the charts that were empty when we were looking at the dashboards or just the summary screen for an instance. That's because not all metrics are visible to the underlying host system. So the host system can see things like CPU, it can see network traffic, but it cannot see things like memory and disk usage. Only the actual operating system that's running, in your instance has visibility into those metrics. So in order to get at those metrics, Google's provided something called the monitoring agent, which runs on your instance. So it's software you install on your instance that provides access to that data and exports it out to cloud monitoring. Now, the instructions that Google provides for installing this are provided, one, they're specific to the operating system of the instance. So for example, we're using Debian 10, I believe, and that line of like Debian and Ubuntu, they all have a certain set of commands that you can run to install it. They're different than from Red Hat. So we're going to do this just a Debian version. And the version that they gave us in the instructions, yeah, we don't need to see the instructions, but they also include the sudo command, because they're assuming that you're running it as you're logging into the instance. And we don't really want to do that. We want to run this as part of our startup scripts, which already run as root. So one thing you'll notice, the difference between this and the scripts in the documentation is that I have removed any reference to sudo. So that's basically it. So I'm going to copy this, and let's go through and see that this actually does work. So I'm going to create, I'm already on the right screen, so I'm in training main. I went to compute engine VM machine instances. I'm here, I hit create. I can leave all this alone, right? And here again, I'm using Debian 10. Then I go to under management. That's where the startup scripts are. I just paste it here. If I didn't do a typo, I can just create it now. So I'm going to pause the video while this creates for a minute, and then we'll look to see, poke around the metrics and see if we see anything different. Okay, we're back. And I also let the instance run for a little bit because we needed to make sure it installed the software, one, and also wanted to make sure it started collecting data. So I let it wait 5 minutes. So if we go into the instance view, and then we go under monitoring, as before, we see CPU, but now we also can see memory utilization, which we didn't see earlier, and then we also see metrics about network, and then we also see metrics about disk, which we didn't see before. Right? So that's that. One other screen that might be interesting, under monitoring, there's monitoring, networking. I'm going to pin this too because I'm tired of scrolling to the bottom. If I go to dashboards, and I go to VM instances, I can see the instance, and you can see now that I didn't really notice this before, but there's actually indications here of whether you've installed the monitoring agent or not. And you can see it's now up to date, the latest version. So now, one of the things that very similar, logging. So when an operating system boots up, there's a bunch of logging information that gets written to various logs that you can use for troubleshooting later if you had to. And out of the box, the host system has no visibility inside of the running instance, right? So again, you need to install some software onto the instance in order to get that data off of the box and then pushed into cloud, in this case, cloud logging, formerly known as Stackdriver. That's why that's the title of Stackdriver, because that's the old term for cloud monitoring and cloud logging. Okay. Now you could actually push this button, and I think it will actually try to install it on your instance for you. But again, we would rather create another instance that with a startup script to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to copy this. Okay. And what this is, actually, we do this in pieces. What I'm copying here is the instructions that Google provided again, but this time for installing logging agent. And all I did between this and the version in their documentation is strip out any reference to sudo, because again, we're running this as a startup script. So let's go create another instance. Dashboard. We need to go back into training main. We need to go to compute engine. And we need to hit the plus. And we need to go down to startup scripts. Now this time we want really both running, so I'm going to copy this, the old one first for the monitoring agent. Then I'm going to hit return. I'm going to copy also the instructions for installing logging agent separately. Copy. And I'm just going to paste it right afterwards. Yep. That's it. And now that I have that, I say create. I'm going to pause the video for a second while this one starts up now. Okay, we're back. You can see our instance 2 is now running, right? And we can go back to monitoring under dashboards. VM instances. So we can see now instance 2, it's got both logging agent, monitoring agent, and logging agent running. Okay. So now the question is, how do we see these logs? Well, let's go to the easy button first. So let's go to training main and go to compute engine. So if I go to instance 2, you will notice that there's this logs entry now that's here that we didn't previously see. So if I go back to instance 1, pretty sure you're not going to see VM instance 1. What happens if I go to, I'm curious now, because this one doesn't have cloud logging installed. Huh. Okay, well, I'm going to have to go back, and I'm surprised that somehow I'm seeing logging at all on. Okay, I'm not going to get distracted for the moment. I'm going to have to figure out why I even see those log entries when I'm looking at, oh Lord, I have to go back to, sometimes navigating this is like difficult. I was surprised to see on instance 1 to see anything about logging, because I didn't install the logging agent. So go investigate that yourself, I guess, because I'm not going to get tied up on that right now. But here you have 2 different logs here. So the difference here is the serial logs. So when your computer first boots, before the operating system really runs, there is a serial port that basically is what you see kind of if you boot up Windows or something, or Linux. Before your machines really started, operating started, you will see stuff streaming across your screen, kind of the initial boot up scripts. That's what these are. And these, anyway, trying to decipher these is, specific to the operating system that you're running. Not terribly interesting. Well, and until something's broken, that is. And then the other logging is once your operating system is up and running, this is the logging that you see. Now, to be fair, maybe what we were seeing earlier was the serial port logging, which I'm pretty sure the host system does have access to. It's the logging of all the processes that, give it the graph here, all the processes running within your operating system that it probably does not have access to. So I'm going to get rid of, let's get rid of a bunch of stuff here. Let's look at the logs directly. So logging is very similar. Basically, this is an example of a query that you're writing, right? And you're looking for a resource type of GC instance, with the label basically being the instance ID. And if you look at a particular log entry here, you will see, this is really hard because I think it's so small. Let me zoom in a little bit, or zoom out. At least I can see things. So if you look carefully inside of a log message, right, it has a text payload. This is essentially the message, but importantly, under the resource labels, you can see this is the kind of metric here. You got a type of metric. It's a GCE instance, and it has 3 different labels to uniquely identify it. This is very similar to what we saw with metrics, right, where you have a type of resource, and then you have labels to uniquely identify it. That's the same concept here. And let's see if I can go through the documentation, just read the documentation, right? So the resource in this case is called a GCE instance. It's a VM instance, and it has 3 identifiers here: the project ID, instance ID, and zone that uniquely identify it. So this is pretty much the same, it might be exactly the same concept as in metrics. You have a resource, but in this case you have a log entry, not a time series. Okay, and that's all for this video. Thank you.